So my name's Hardwicke Collings, and I'm a midwife and a teacher and an author and a workshop facilitator, and I founded and teach in the School of Shamanic Midwifery, which is a women's mystery school, and I teach that in Australia and overseas, and it's also starting a part-time version of it in April this year. It's a year-long women's mystery school. So there's information over there in the stall that's got the hennaing happening if you want to get some information. And I'll just pass this around now, and if you want to put your name and email address on, if you want me to email you this presentation that I'm giving today. So that'll come around. And I'm also giving some workshops in Melbourne next month. So I've got flyers about that up on the stage as well, so you can grab those if you like. So I think that the setup in here today and the weather that we're experiencing this weekend is a classic example of the opportunity and the medicine and the challenges of this time in a woman's life. The change of life, the transition from one place to the next. Because when you get to this place, which is really like 45 to 55, and younger for some and older for some, you start to meet all the puddles that you've created in your life from the things that you've been doing over and over and over again, and you start to really wonder whether you want to maintain these puddles or whether you want to somehow get rid of them or whatever. So I think that as just as Gandalf said to Frodo, it's not what happens to you, it's how you are with it. So you may have an experience of a day at the festival that's very challenging. It's not about what's happening, it's how you are with it. It's all about perception, all about the opportunity to learn whatever you need to learn about yourself in any given moment. So that's the opportunity. So let me just turn the page and speak to you with some words that I've written. And basically what I'm going to do is share with you information that I've gathered on this subject of Autumn Woman, Harvest Queen, information that I know and things that my journey is teaching me. So as I sit here, perched on the transformational altar of womanhood, somewhere in the midst of becoming the next version of me, I feel I can now speak to her as an initiate. My aim for today is that for those of you on the threshold of this rite of passage, that I can share some information that will be helpful. For those of you deep in it, this information can really help you navigate what's going on. And for those of you already cloaked in the wisdom cape, I honour and respect and celebrate you. So, who's finished bleeding? Who's in the process of finishing bleeding? Who's still bleeding? Well, good on you all for coming. Thank you for coming. And I hope that this can be informative for you. So, my intention is to share, as I said, things I've known, things I've gathered, and what my journey has taught me, and also to offer you a daily practice to help negotiate this territory, this change of life. But firstly, I just want to draw you a map so that you understand this season in its relevance to the whole of life. So I'm just going to use this whiteboard and I'm going to move it around. And for those of you who were at the session yesterday that I did with Nim Fox Harper on sacred ecology, I'm just going to do a really short version of this. And that is to explain where this season of our life fits. It's all right, I'll walk around in the whole of our life. So you've all heard of the maiden mother crone? That's a story from a long, long time ago. A story that tells the time when we were mothers by the age we were 14, grandmothers by the time we were 30, and dead by the time we were 45. And if we reached menopause before we died, then it must be really close to death, because many women died before menopause came. So now we get to 100. So when we reach menopause at the age of 45 to 55, we're like halfway through. So we have now got another season in our lives. So rather than maiden, mother, crone, it's maiden, mother. The word I was taught is Marga, which is the equivalent of, the female equivalent of the masculine, which is magus, which is magician. We all know that man. He's like 50 to 60 years old. He's CEO, he's boss man, man of power. This is the equivalent, the Marga, the feminine version, female version. There's other names that are used: enchantress, matriarch, grandmother, Amazon. Anyone heard of any others? Warrioress, warrior. So it's as if the autumn of our lives. So I'll just quickly draw this up. Okay. Thank you, Tallulah. So we'll just move this around, and I'm just going to draw a circle and put on the lines and say that there's 4 seasons in the earth, and there's spring, summer, don't worry, you'll see this in a minute, autumn and winter. And this goes this way, and if you're from the northern hemisphere, it goes the other way, and that's north, south, east, west. And I'm going to actually put this down on the ground. I'll build this altar as well. So north is here. So north represents summer in the southern hemisphere. So that would be summer solstice. Whoa, shit.
Jane, in this part of the world, the Indigenous people recognise 6 seasons.
Yep.
How does that fit?
So, same for where is it? Same for where either's turned off. Can you all hear me? No, it's on something else. It's all right. So where I live as well, there's 6 seasons, and it's marked by the various flowerings of the different acacias, wattles. So what we're working with now is the archetypal seasons, just because we all know what they mean. You know, so can you hear me? Okay, well I'll talk even louder. How's that? Okay, so opposite the summer is the winter solstice, is the winter solstice. And then at this point, there's the beginning of spring in bulk, and then the spring equinox, which is halfway between the solstices. And then Beltane is the season that heralds the beginning of summer. Summer solstice is the peak of summer, longest day, shortest night. And then we have Lammas, which is the first of 3 harvest festivals. And autumn equinox, which we have just had last weekend. So these happen every 6 weeks. There's a festival that our ancient ancestors marked with all kinds of practices, because it really mattered what happened. If they didn't plant in the spring, there was no food in the winter, let alone everywhere else. And then the one we're headed to next is Samhain, spelt Samhain, or otherwise known as Halloween. So we're headed for Halloween on April the 30th. Halloween is not on October the 31st in the southern hemisphere. That's actually Beltane, which is the beginning of summer. There's no pumpkins then. There's pumpkins now. And we bring them out and put them in front of our doors to mark that Sabbath soon. So just like the seasons of the earth, we have our life seasons. Same thing, the 4 seasons. So the spring is the time of maiden, marked by a rite of passage of birth. And then at around 13, the average age for menarche, menage, the initiation into womanhood, the rite of passage of the first blood, that happens to initiate the young girl to be a young woman coming into her womanhood. That's the equivalent of the spring equinox. And then Beltane, the beginning of the summer, ending at Lammas, the whole summer, is the beginning of mother. The summer of our lives is the mother season. And we enter mother whether we have babies or not. Mother is a different season to maiden. I'm sure if you can remember back, and those of you who are closer, the difference between, this is the season here of maiden, marked here by the menarche. The difference between, say, a 23-year-old and a 27-year-old, very different. The season of maiden from 0 to 25 is about self in the healthy version. And she who is not held in that self space ends up traveling the rest of her life saying, what about me? So we need to hold our maidens in that place of honoring that it needs to be all about them. It's such a short period of time as well, very small period of time. And then the mother season starts at around 25, as I said, and it's a different season. It's about nurturing, it's about gestating, it's about birthing, whether that's babies or businesses or projects, things that you birth things, and it's a time of nurturing, you're nurturing others. Sometimes that ends up a bit tricky when you start to nurture your partner and mothering your partner. Probably not a good idea, but you mother things, you nurture things. And the beginning of the mother season happens with pregnancy. So if there's a pregnancy before, say 25 or whatever, a teenage pregnancy, then you're in motherhood, but you're still a maiden. And that's, a tricky place, potentially. But back in the day, that was fairly normal as well. And then the other big thing to remember is that every pregnancy results in a birth, whether that's an abortion, a miscarriage, a baby that doesn't make it all the way. Every pregnancy results in a birth and needs to be honored as such because it's part of your womb journey. It's part of the story of you. And the purpose and the opportunity of doing it like that is that you get to learn what happens for you at every rite of passage around the wheel. So every pregnancy is another rite of passage in the mother season and teaches you what you need to learn about yourself to take you to the next place on your journey to wholeness. There's no failures in birth. You have the birth you need to have, whether that's an abortion, a miscarriage, the birth of a business, or the next phase of you. You have the birth experience you need to have to teach you what you need to learn about yourself to take you to the next place on your journey to wholeness. Based on the notion that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and it's a life journey of whatever it is this time around that we need to learn. And our rites of passage are as if a portal that shows us what the purpose of our life is this time, what the lessons that we've come to learn this lifetime can be seen by looking at what happened at your birth, what happened at your menarche, what happened with every experience of your womb in terms of a pregnancy. And then we come to the menopause, which is the next rite of passage. And menopause is marked, and that's the Marga season. What we're here to talk about today is heralded by menopause. And menopause, as I said, is 45 to 55 are the average ages, or the span. The average age, I think, is like 51. And it's the rite of passage into the next season of Marga, or the second half of your life, or your wise woman years. And whatever happens at a rite of passage, whatever happens, whatever is said to you, whatever's going on in your life, whatever your physical experience is, emotional, spiritual experience, whatever happens at a rite of passage, so that's birth, menarche, every pregnancy and birth, and now again at menopause, whatever happens, teaches you on a subliminal level, which means you don't even necessarily notice it, how your culture values the next role you're going into and therefore how to behave. So your life journey this lifetime is a series of those sorts of experiences through your rites of passage. So what you can do for your homework, and when you're driving along and you're on automatic pilot and you start thinking about all your rites of passage, look for the patterns. Look for the theme that has developed through your life. How you're born completely choreographs your life, and how you birth things, whether that be babies or a project, even knitting, anything. How you birth things is affected by how you're born. She who was initiated into womanhood at the altar of Menarche is she who shows up at the birth altar to learn the next version of herself as she shifts into that. And then likewise at menopause, all of this arrives here and is the next rite of passage into Marga. And then at around 70, there's another shift. And it's not like really 70 necessarily. It could be 65 for some and 75 for others. But the final life season is crone. And that is as if the winter of your life. Very, very different. And up until this new kind of way of looking at the 4 seasons of our lives, and we just had the maiden, mother, crone, then at menopause you would become the crone. Well, I am not a crone. My mother is a crone. She's 80 years old. She lives a very different life to me, but I am now, as a menopausal woman, at the beginning of the second half of my life. So it's a very different place to crone. Does that make sense? So when, okay, that's enough, thanks. Thank you so much. When a woman arrives at her Marga season, the autumn of her life, in the way that Mother Nature intended, say in terms of ages, her children are older, well into their teens perhaps, needing her less, perhaps having even left home as young adults. And their process of separation has probably already begun. And the turmoil of this separation process from our teenagers or early 20-year-olds or even older is huge. And then combined with the labour pains of perimenopause, we have the combination of that really does give us the opportunity to birth the next version of ourselves. And the role of mother is very different in the next phase. I mean, it's not like you cease to be a mother. You're forever a mother, but your children need you less, unless you've had babies really late in your life. And then that's another experience of the crossover that the teen pregnancy, teenage mothers who are still maidens but also mothers, and then menopausal women who've still got little children. You know, the pull in different directions is, I'm sure many of you are aware of it. So the role of mother is different in the Marga phase. It's more like you become a taxi driver and a bank account, as opposed to the hands-on that you have been earlier. So for women who haven't had babies but have been mothering projects, focusing on their careers, nurturing their careers, they probably at this point, at around menopause, have arrived to the place in their lives where they have had years and years of experience of being themselves in their career, and they come to a place where they know their job and they're good at it and they function in a sustainable way. Like this, I'm talking healthy here, right? And they're at a place where they know what they know and they're prepared and ready to move on to the next place. So menopause heralds the end of mother and the beginning of Marga, no matter whether you've had babies or not. So just make sure that you are in the mother season of your life from say 25 to menopause, whether you have babies or not. So the difference between these seasons are the season of maiden, one word would be carefree. The season of mother, responsibility. The season of Marga, carefree responsibility. The season of crone, responsibly carefree. So the Marga season seems to be a bit of a modern privilege of our culture nowadays, and so with that it has its responsibilities and its privileges. So the privilege of the Marga season is we actually lead really cushy lives. Like, you know, not even 100 years ago, our daily life would have been so caught up in all the things that our robots now do, like washing machines and ovens, and like it takes very little time to get a meal on the table these days. Whereas back in the day, that would have been like all day. We go to the gym to get exercise, or we go and do specific exercise that we would have just had in our daily lives. Cars, supermarkets, ovens, you know, the life of the modern woman is actually really cushy. So I think in that way that it means that we have all this extra time and energy in our lives that we need to use responsibly. And so the privilege of that life and the responsibility is that the Marga, the autumn woman, the harvest queen, has a responsibility to be the strong conscience of her community. My teacher, Cedar Barstow, who taught me about the Marga phase, and I've written an article about this, it's on my website moonsong.com.au, it's called Evolution of the Triple Goddess. She taught me about the season of Marga, and she said that in the age of the Marga, so the autumn of your life, so menopause to 70 or so, that the Marga can hear and tell the truth without shame or blame. And she can stand in her strength while staying in her heart. So that's the responsibility, is to hold that place. And as a grandmother, whether that's of your own grandchildren or of all new children, we care about the planet and the world that these children are coming into. So the responsibility of the Marga is to be able to give back, to participate in a way, like Cedar said, hearing and telling the truth without shame or blame. So just to backtrack, you can enter Marga, the autumn season of your life, also through a surgical menopause. That means you have to have that's the ovaries coming out, because you can have a hysterectomy and still go through the cycle of that season if your ovaries are still there, because it's up to your ovaries about all of this. Or a chemical menopause, which might be from chemotherapy or radiation therapy, or sometimes some really hardcore drugs that are used in thyroid problems. So you can have a menopause that's not just the culmination of the 40 years or so of bleeding by something like that. And also some women go through premature menopause, and that's usually associated with some other issues and stuff. So, and for those that it's not, they don't know why it happens. So obviously it's part of the person's story. So just to describe the experience that is the beginning of the autumn of our lives and has been called perimenopause. So peri means around, and around menopause. So the journey that's also been called the change of life. Is it on? So menopause is said to have occurred when there has been 1 year without bleeding. Others say 2 years without bleeding. But the bottom line that my journey has taught me is that it takes however long it takes. Just like menarche, we never know when the blood flow will begin. Just like birth, we never know when labour's going to begin or how long it's going to take. And just like the last period, you never know if it's going to be the last period or not until it was. And then you never know whether there'll be another one. Plenty of women have stopped bleeding for years and then started bleeding again. Plenty of women, when they do strong women's work, having stopped bleeding for years, bleed again. Sometimes that happens with the death of your parent or whatever. So deep spaces that you get to can bring on another bleed. So menopause is not a disease. So it does not need a diagnosis. So like every other rite of passage, it comes when it comes. And that's a little bit unpredictable for us in our culture, where we want to know what's going on and when it's going to start and when it's going to end. But menopause, part of its service to us is this. The experience of perimenopause, the physical, emotional and spiritual symptoms of this rite of passage are many and varied. I'll just list off some of those. Hot flushes, night sweats, which is hot flushes in the night, chills, which is when you hot flush goes away and you get freezing cold because you're covered in sweat. In America, they call them hot flashes, which I think is so cool. The American women flash. Australian and English women flush. Insomnia, mood changes and fluctuations, vagina and bladder changes. And what that looks like is incontinence for some, stress incontinence and urgency incontinence, itchiness, hair growth, hair loss. So hair on the chinny chin chin. Constipation, dizziness, dry eyes, burning mouth. Headaches, migraines, memory loss. And then apparently you forget that you've forgotten, so it doesn't matter anymore. Osteoporosis, cramps, arthritis, palpitations, decreased libido, depression, rage, and even suicidal thoughts. Some women have lots of these symptoms, some have little or few, some have none. And the experience of perimenopause has been likened to a prolonged PMS. So, wow, you get the message. Exactly, there's more. And women who have experienced depression before may again at perimenopause. Bottom line being, wherever you go, there you are. And menopause, as Dr. Christian Northrup, who's written a wonderful book about this called The Wisdom of Menopause, as she says, menopause is designed to heal all the unhealed parts of you. That is the wisdom of menopause. It's designed to heal all the unhealed parts of you. She goes on to say that the symptoms of perimenopause are as if another labour. And this time, what's birthing is the next version of you. And it takes however long it takes. She calls it the mother of all wake-up calls. Because everything that was swept under the carpet in your life comes out so that you can deal with it, face it and heal it. and let go of it so that you can learn to become the next version of you. What needs to come up for you to be this next version of you will come up and show itself as symptoms physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So why are these symptoms happening and what's causing them? The symptoms of perimenopause are all about the effects of the changing levels of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, follicle stimulating hormone, which is abbreviated as FSH, and luteinizing hormone, which is abbreviated as LH, and the state of your adrenal glands. At menopause, estrogen is basically half of premenopausal levels, and progesterone gets close to 0. And the adrenals that sit on your kidneys take over production of estrogen and can become depleted by this process. Depleted adrenals often overreact, giving rise to sudden sensations of anxiety, fear, and nervousness. As Ayurvedic Dr. Jimmy Walumban asks of women who are in their pre-perimenopausal phase, so those of you who are still bleeding, these are the questions to ask of yourself. Do you need caffeine to get you through the day? Have you used cortisol for long periods of time? Have you ever had chronic fatigue? Do you have trouble sleeping? Are you a bit of a worrywart? Did you do copious amounts of ecstasy or speed in your misspent youth? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then now is the time to invest in your health so you can sail through menopause. Contrary to popular belief, menopausal symptoms are not so much about the reproductive hormones, but about adrenal health. After a woman stops ovulating, her adrenal glands become the primary producers of estrogen. This is why exhausted, burned out women often have such a hard time. So if you are still bleeding, then now's the time to nurture your adrenal health. I'll get into that as well soon. So also at menopause, this is really exciting, our FSH, so follicle stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone, they go to the levels that we experienced at ovulation in our menstrual cycle and stay there. Their levels are 1,000 times greater than they are at any other point in our life cycle, and they have a new role. They serve as extra neurotransmitters in the right side of our brain. And the effects of this are increased creativity, intuition, and visionary experiences.
Building the biology, baby.
We are miracles. Dr. Christian Northrup says the point of these new and constant levels of FSH and LH are to drive the changes taking place in the woman's life at this time. So the hormones that have dominated our lives from puberty to menopause during our reproductive years keep us in a mental, psychological, and physical space that is based on attracting a mate and caring for our children and others. We are much more likely in our mother season to compromise, to maintain the support that we have, and we often lose sight of our individual goals. Our primary focus in the mother season of our lives, due to the hormones, is to maintain balance and keep the peace for the sake of the family. And we are rewarded greatly for this. The hormones cause us to feel really good. And at menopause, as these hormone levels shift dramatically, the nurture role subsides and women choose where they focus their energy. It is as if a veil lifts. And often one thing that happens is that women recall and decide to confront past abuses. Due to the biochemical and hormone changes at menopause, Dr. Christian Northrup says a woman's buried traumas and unresolved issues come to the light. They show up as physical symptoms that cannot be ignored. The perimenopausal woman can be reflective, and she can see these experiences anew and begin, if she hasn't already, the deep healing she needs, as well as see the larger meaning of these incidences or processes or experiences in her life, for her life story. At perimenopause, the word is we are now strong enough deep within to allow the pain and the secrets of the past to rise to the surface and be cleared out for once and for all. What a gift. The new hormone levels, the FSH and the LH, that have the creativity, intuition, and visionary experiences, prime the brain for new perceptions and new behaviours. Often what surfaces is anger. And it is expressed in this time in a newfound way of clarity. Ways that women have often been unable to express before. The clarity that comes with the anger. Sometimes just irritability comes to the surface, or grouchy, or aggravated, or envious, or overwhelmed, or depressed. Maybe this shows up as high blood pressure or headaches, but as Dr. Christian Northrup says, it's all anger. And it's a powerful signal from our inner wisdom. She says the rewiring that goes on in our brain at this phase makes our vision clearer and our motivations easier to identify. Using anger as a catalyst for positive change is always liberating. Unfortunately, these feelings have been seen as unwelcome visitors, and a lot of women are medicated to soothe themselves and make them feel better, when actually the opportunity is to ask, what is out of balance in my life that needs to change? Old habits surface for reevaluation. Do you really want to keep drinking as much alcohol as you are? Do you really want to keep smoking, drinking coffee, eating so much chocolate, so many carbohydrates? These habits, usually what we've adopted over the years to rev ourselves up or calm ourselves down, and our responses to the stresses of our lives, past and present, are up for evaluation. Do we really want to continue these? Because they have huge effects on our blood sugar levels. And our blood sugar levels greatly affect our energy levels and our moods. One of the most important things to address at this time of perimenopause and menopause is your nutrition. The diet, your diet, what food you're eating. We all need certain proportions of protein, fat, and carbohydrate for our bodies to function as they're designed. Unbalanced eating and excessive carbohydrates can lead to insulin resistance that leads to more fat production, particularly around the middle. Stress affects our whole system. We make more cortisol or adrenaline, which in turn affects our estrogen and progesterone and testosterone production. And this all affects how we feel and how our body works or doesn't. And this is a vicious cycle, and one we get the chance to be with at perimenopause, or else. It's basically all about balance, parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system balance, yin and yang. And we need to find what that is for ourselves, and it's probably a lot less doing and a lot more being. So what relieves the symptoms? I personally think a drug-free rite of passage is, well, that's the commitment that I've made. I want to have a drug-free rite of passage, just like childbirth, and for all the same reasons. Nourishing yourself on every level helps the symptoms. Nettle infusions. Susan Weed, this awesome book, New Menopausal Years, has got lots and lots of herbal suggestions to help you, which is basically at its most fundamental about nourishing yourself. And there are lots of other writers on menopause that can help you with those things. But really, at its most simple, it's about nourishment. What makes the symptoms worse? Adrenal fatigue, poor nutrition, caffeine, alcohol, smoking, not enough sleep. And the symptoms are exacerbated by whatever would now be in your life a long-term physical deficiency from how you've been living your life. And psychologically, what increases or makes the symptoms worse, any aspect of our past that we have difficulty releasing can make menopausal symptoms worse. It's the same as PMS, premenstrual syndrome. It's been likened to an elongated premenstrual syndrome. So, what should we do about it? Well, the first principle of wise woman healing that Susan Weed brings us, the first principle, do nothing.